So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this Live Well Today webinar in June 2026. I'm Chris Kruger, Senior Manager for Content with the Phinney Foundation. And for this month's webinar, we're pleased to welcome Dr. Kelly Rees for a discussion about how to maintain connection and intimacy in your life when living with Parkinson's. Before we start in on the topic, Dr. Rees, can you just give us a quick overview of your background and how you came to be involved in Parkinson's?
Sure. Hi. Nice to speak with you today, Chris. I'm Dr. Kelly Rees, and I live in Portland, Oregon, and it's a beautiful day in Portland today. I've been involved with intimacy and sexuality work for a long time, almost 30 years, which is crazy because I can't possibly be old enough to have been doing something for that. My background is in psychology and human sexuality. That's my PhD is in human sexuality. And over the years, I have encountered clients who have Parkinson's, and they have educated me a lot about what it is to live with this disease. And in the last several years, I've paid much more attention to it and did lectures for the Parkinson's community in Los Angeles, in Portland, Oregon, in Las Vegas. And I've been lately, in the last couple of years, I've been doing this great program with Judith Sachs, who is in Philadelphia, called Dance Night and Intimacy for Parkinson's, where we've put together little programs to fill out the fun part of life and to see if we can reignite the loving and romantic and maybe even sexual connection between partners who have Parkinson's, because, Parkinson's can eat your life. And so that's my specialization.
So to get us started, Dr. Rees, how do you define intimacy?
Thank you for asking. So intimacy is the thing that makes it wonderful that you can interact with another person. That was a clumsy sentence. Intimacy is like the point of it, the point of being in a relationship with another person. If you have a close relationship with someone, you want to be seen, you want to be known, you want to be able to be touched in that, not just physically, but emotionally. You want your heart to be reached also. And that's what happens in intimate connection, whether it's with your intimate partner or with someone else. Intimacy is that ability to be touched.
Yeah, so I wanted to start us off there because I think people can hear intimacy and they can think, oh, this means this is a conversation about sexuality. And that's not really necessarily the case. Is that fair to say?
That is correct. Because by the time we get to be adults, most of us have figured out that, sex can really be not intimate. And intimacy can be not sexual at all. There's a lot of different ways. When you live a life together with another person, you have all kinds of opportunities for intimate connection or for turning away from each other. And so it doesn't have to be sexual, but it can be. It can be.
Yeah. So, to jump into the Parkinson's side of this, I think one of the things that happens for a lot of people with Parkinson's is that the diagnosis disrupts not just daily life, not just the things that one might do on a day-to-day basis, but also your sense of identity and your vision of your future can change. And I think that very clearly has an impact on your sort of ability to interact and feel close with people. So how can people stay close with one another when so much changes, not just externally even because of Parkinson's, but also maybe in how they see themselves? What do people do to stay connected in that context?
That's such a great question. Yes. So if you talk to a whole bunch of people about intimacy or about sexuality or their sexual expression, you will find that many people identify with the way their body can function, with things that they know how to do, with their how they're perceived by the world. And as that changes, as their body functioning changes, as how they're perceived in the world changes, how they perceive themselves change, they can lose identity around that. So when we do work with intimacy, it actually helps shore up your sense of self, and it lets your identity shift from functionality to a deeper thing. Do I want to use the word soul? Maybe I do, right? Because it goes deeper than that. If I can no longer do the thing that my body has been able to do effortlessly since I was a young person. Who am I now? Well, you're still a person with a heart and a soul and a body. And let's find out how you can connect with what's happening with you now and how you can keep that identification flexible enough to keep being yourself as your body progresses and changes.
So on that note, there's sometimes a sense of loss that comes with Parkinson's, and sometimes people can be there can be a lot of grief. So I wonder if you can talk a little about how to acknowledge that grief without getting stuck in that and sort of isolating because of it. Sometimes is a thing people do.
Yeah, I think that's a very common experience. Grief, of course, that something is lost, right? Something has changed and something is lost. And that makes it very difficult to talk about sometimes. Because when you get into the grief experience, it kind of hurts to talk about it. It hurts. It brings, like, you can feel tears coming up in the back of your eyes. So I use this tool that is called the feelings wheel. This is a pretty one. And Ariel, if you want to put this up in the chat right now, there's a link. Thank you. There's a link in the chat for this, a version of this, which you can pull up on your phone. You can get on your computer. You can print it out. And I suggest doing that and keep a couple of them around. What this is in the center of this big pretty wheel are some big, obvious feelings. You can't see it on my screen, joy and fear and anger and like things like that. So to help you deal with grief, this is a great tool because you can look at this wheel. It's got all these words that they're feeling words. And you can say, gosh, I feel embarrassed. I feel insecure. I feel fragile with my changing body. Now, those are great things to start a conversation with, either with your partner, your friends, people that you know who understand what you're going through, or a therapist. Because when you talk about these things, it's like letting sunlight on them, and they will heal a lot more quickly. I mean, your body will never go back to how it used to be, And as a person in an aging body, I don't have Parkinson's, but boy, things are just not what they used to be. And I also experience grief around that. Then it helps to be able to name the feeling so that it's not just trapped inside me, and to share it with someone else who can go, oh, yeah, I understand what you're saying, right? That builds intimate connection.
You mentioned it as something that can start a conversation, but it can also happen that this could be useful in the middle of a conversation, right? If you're having a conversation that gets difficult or is maybe not difficult, maybe it's because it's fun and you're trying to understand what somebody's going through. It can be a conversation, it can be a boon. It can be a helper to sort of make sure you're not missing each other in a conversation, that you understand what somebody's experiencing by just checking in with that. In fact, I know some people, my friends, have that wheel on their refrigerator so that if you're having a conversation, it gets messy for whatever reason, even if it's a positive mess, you can look at it and say, wait, what are you feeling? Look at the wheel. And and then
that's a good redirection. Also, this thing stops fights, because if the conversation is out of frustration, I didn't do the thing I was supposed to do. You didn't do the thing you were supposed to do. We didn't get the thing, and people's tempers start rising. If you can redirect it towards, here's how I'm feeling. I'm disappointed, I'm upset, I'm whatever, then that turns it into not blaming or raging and shaking a fist, but, oh, God, I'm having some really hard feelings right now.
Yeah, so the point of what we're talking about, I think, right now is communication. So let's go there maybe. And I guess clear communication seems like it's pretty central to understanding and connecting with others, no matter the character of the intimacy. If you're going to be connected, you kind of need to be able to communicate somehow. So what can we do if we're living with Parkinson's to stay connected while Parkinson's changes so much about our lives?
Yeah.
And for that matter, what do care partners and other people in our lives do to help us communicate with each other clearly? What do we do? How do we do this when Parkinson's changes so much?
Yeah.
Besides, like more and more the tool will help, but you have to actually execute on it too. So how do we do it?
I've never spoken with a couple who doesn't say we need better communication. Everyone knows this. Communication is vital to all relationships, but especially to intimate relationships. And yet, mostly we suck at it. Mostly we suck because it's so hard, right? We don't get a lot of practice giving and receiving difficult information. We don't practice. And this little buddy over here is your tool to help you practice by saying, I am so upset with you. I am disappointed in myself. I feel lost right now, whatever the thing is, or I'm so excited. So the feelings wheel helps you use words, but also if you're living with Parkinson's, words might be more difficult to use now. Communication is not just through speech, right? It's very good to have, if you have speech as a tool, to be able to use it, either written or verbal or something like this. But you also want to think about all the other ways that we have of communicating with each other. You have a face, which emotes. And sometimes you get masking with Parkinson's, and so that doesn't happen anymore. You have a body that moves. And you might understand when your body is in this position, you feel this particular way. Possibly your partner doesn't know that, or your care team doesn't know that. So when you can look at all the different ways you have of communicating through movement, through touch, through words, through thought, through all these things, you have a much fuller range of expression.
Yeah, I just, when you put your shoulder in that position, I just realized that I'm often holding my body in certain ways that I think my partner probably would understand, but I don't actually have any idea if she does understand what I'm experiencing when I'm in this position. So I may know by my positioning that I'm experiencing something, but I've never even thought that would be, until right now, I've never thought that would be something I need to articulate. I know she knows what that definition is. When I'm in this position, it's because I'm feeling pain. Yeah. Or it's because I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling. I just never even put together that I know what it means. She may not. So thanks for that little moment of clarity for myself.
Yeah, and we learn these things as very, very young children, pre-speech. Infants learn these things when they're looking in their caregiver's face and they see, oh, mommy's making that face. That means, uh-oh, I'm scared now. Or mommy's smiling at me, and so I'm happy and safe and okay, right? That continues our whole lives. And this is one of the hard parts about Parkinson's when that goes away. That how can I read you now? What does you're not giving me that facial expression that I'm used to knowing means, oh, you love me, or oh, you're upset, something's wrong. So let me know, how else does it show up in you?
Yeah. So, I feel like we're maybe making this sound a little too simple. I'm afraid, because sometimes people can, it can be a little bit tense, right? You think, yes. Oh, I know this means this to me, but why don't you understand this? How can you? And then there's tension that arises. And so I'm thinking back to the tool when we were planning this conversation. You had that deck of cards. Do you have that handy?
I do.
I'm wondering, I'm wondering if you can describe how that might be helpful, and what that tool might do for a couple who's maybe having a hard time even starting a conversation, or not necessarily a couple, brothers or sisters.
Yeah.
If you're having trouble communicating, what other tools are there besides the wheel?
I'm going to show you some things that that are not available for consumption right now, but just use these as ideas. And also, I did just try to figure out how to print some more of these up. So Judith Sachs and I made this great deck of cards. These are prompts for conversation and for intimate connection. They're in 3 sections. The first one is, please show me. And the first card says, please show me what being turned on looks like for you. That it happens to be the first one I grabbed here. Please show me how you would like me to hug you. Okay, so some of these things. Tell me is the second set of cards. Please tell me what you miss about your body. So that's something that invites conversation that would open up the grief channel, right? Oh my God, I used to be able to ski. Actually, that's not me, that's Chris. I've always been a bad skier, and I stopped like 25
We talked about this right before we got on the call. We were talking about skiing for unrelated reasons, but yeah, that's where that comes from.
Please tell me something I don't know about you. People can live together for 30, 40, 50 years and think they know each other, and let me tell you, they don't. They don't. So there's always something to learn about your partner. Please tell me one thing you love about me at the beginning of our relationship. So these invite conversation. And then there are ones that are very specifically for touch. Please touch me. And a bunch of kiss me where you would like. Please touch my fill in the body part like this. The reason we made these is because most people do not have concrete conversations about any of this. And so these are just little nudges, little placeholders. And sometimes people use these by going through the deck and taking out the ones they do not want to play with. I don't want to touch your body. Fine, that goes out of the deck here. I'm mad at you right now, so I don't want to play the game. Anyway, whatever the things are.
So I was thinking about when you said I don't want to touch your body, I thought, and there's a question in the chat that just came up asking where can we find this deck of cards, and I think it's not available at the current moment. But I think what I was about to say might relate to this question. So let me go with what I was about to say, and then if you can answer the question more thoroughly about the specific deck of cards, maybe that's useful. I was just thinking when you said I don't want to be touched or I don't want to touch your body, I thought, I really loved my friend Brian used to touch my elbow sometimes when we were in college together. He would touch my elbow and even now he'll still do this sometimes. And I just felt so soothed by that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I ask him to do that if like someone's going wrong, for an intense conversation. Like, can you just do that thing with my elbow? And it's really nice for me. But what I'm noticing is that, touch is a kind of communication in its own right, and maybe we can transition into let's go to the deck of cards first, and then we can transition into touch as a type of communication. But I was thinking that I could maybe ask my friends to write this deck of cards for me. Like, what questions should I ask, and what do you think for me I should be thinking about in terms of these conversations?
Yeah, totally. You can get a deck of index cards and write your own. So in my thinking about this, excuse me, I divided them up into show me, let me know what's happening for you in your changing body right now. And a bunch of things that you might need more information about, or I might need more information about you. Please tell me, use your words to describe having to do with grief and your feelings right now. And that reflects right back to the feelings wheel. Tell me. Tell me a thing you used to enjoy that isn't fun anymore. Tell me what you miss about your body. Tell me what you love about your body. So things like that. And then prompts to touch. I could make a whole deck of cards just for touch prompts, because if you didn't discover that having someone touch your elbow like that was soothing, you could go your whole life and not know about that.
Yeah. Well, so, and what I'm thinking about as you're talking is I think while the deck of cards that you're looking at right now, someone couldn't get a hold of that directly, it may not actually be the most useful deck of cards for them anyway. They may not need to talk about all those particular categories. And maybe I would say, and I may actually do this now that we're talking about it, I may actually ask my friends, rather than getting me a birthday present, make this birthday present for me and get me the category. I'll give them the categories and you can come up with the questions from the categories that I think I need to work on. So that would be a useful way to sort of make it customized to myself, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, and to ask your friends what you need help with. That's like, whoa.
Well, it's funny, when we started this conversation, when we joined the call behind the scenes look here, when we have these conversations and we have these webinars, we always join a panel. The panel joins the waiting room separately, and we talk before the meeting to make sure we're all set up and ready to go. And we were discussing, a couple different features of the webinar, but also just how we would, move through the conversation. And I think I just had a Parkinson's moment. I completely lost my train of thought there. Sorry about that. I don't know what I was going to refer to, but we'll just jump on to the next part of this conversation. And this is where we're going to get into some fun and maybe not so fun moments for people. This is where we might get a little bit sensitive here now, because I think we should probably talk about physical and romantic intimacy. And And one challenge with Parkinson's is that it can affect your self-image. I mean, I just had a moment, right? I sort of had an issue where I lost my train of thought, and that can be embarrassing, especially if you're in an intimate moment where you're trying to have a deep connection. And so one challenge is, what do we do about feeling desirable and thinking we can even have connections when our bodies change, our abilities to think clearly can change, we can lose our train of thoughts, we can have a difficulty finding words or doing more than one thing at a time. How do we make that work? How do we have a good self-image? What can we do to work on that if we're experiencing symptoms of Parkinson's that challenge that?
Yeah. See, they're such good questions. You're great at this. So a thing that you can do to start is by finding areas of gratitude for yourself, areas of things about yourself that you acknowledge, that you appreciate, And I think a gratitude practice is important for every single person. And if you have a partner, it might be fun to have to do it for each other, because your partner will probably notice things about you that you don't notice, or appreciate things about you that are pretty awesome that you would never even think about or look at. So that's a really good way to start, is by finding things that, despite all the constant changes and everything that's falling apart and going away, there are still things that you will appreciate about yourself. And they may be physical things. They may be, my eyebrows are so awesome. Or my big toes. Look at my big toe. I don't like my big toes, so maybe that's why that's on my mind. Or, some part, my forearm has a bump on it now, but it's so lovely. And things that you like about being touched, things that you enjoy in your physical body, like having your elbow touched. I found a weird thing like 3 years ago. I mean, I've done a lot of things with my body. I've been focused on sexuality for a really long time. And my partner randomly put his thumb in my ear and started rubbing my ear. And it was like your elbow getting touched, like, oh, that's wonderful. Oh my gosh. And it's like a joke in our household now. Getting you revved up. He might come up and just gum in my like, oh, thank you. So, if you kind of be open to those things and look for things that you find delightful. Part of what can happen in Parkinson's in a couple is that touch gets really medicalized. There's so many things that have to happen. And there's so much upkeep and maintenance and care that has to happen, that it can take the joy out of it. And it can be difficult for you to find that the interest in touching for pleasure, in asking for touch for pleasure, for whatever that is. I think of bodies like whole playgrounds. You're a playground, right? And you may have your favorite things on the playground. You may really be a slides kind of guy, or you might really like the merry-go-round. But remember, there's a whole playground there. So if the slides are closed today, or the merry-go-round is broken, let's try the swings. Let's run around and sit on those little rocking animals. Let's do the teeter-tot. Let's do something else that's fun. And I invite you, as part of your gratitude practice, to look for things that feel good in your own body. And also to look for things that feel good in your partner's body, if you're partnered, to see, like, how can I give them something that feels good? When I work with a couple that has Parkinson's, I never know which person is going to be more focused on touch and physicality and sexuality and intimacy. I never know. Is it the person with Parkinson's? Is it the care partner? Or both? Or none? For a lot of people, when things get difficult, when those things like sexual functioning changes, they can recede from them. They can say, okay, I guess that's done. That doesn't matter anymore. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want to feel bad. Nobody wants to do stuff that makes them feel like a failure, right? So they just stop doing that. And I want to invite you to not necessarily stop, but be open to change. And if you can get your focus to shift from functionality, from performing the thing, and just focus on pleasure. You might find that, having your partner hold your feet is actually the thing today. That might be the thing. You might not want more than that.
Somebody just put a comment in the chat, which is actually related to a question we received before the webinar as well. So maybe we can go there if you're willing. It's maybe it follows directly what you said too. The person in the chat wrote, "What if your partner doesn't want to touch or be intimate anymore?" And I think we want to get to that very specifically, but I want to tie this other question into there too and see if you can't sort of go at both these questions at the same time if you're willing to try that. The question we received before the webinar was from someone with Parkinson's who said, "I feel out of control of my body because of Parkinson's, and sometimes touch actually increases that discomfort. Yeah. It makes me not want to be touched," they wrote. "And how can I remain close to anyone when touch is so unpleasant for me?"
Yeah. So, minds and bodies are so connected with these things, and that feeling of out of control, that's really scary. That is my least favorite feeling of all the feelings, is out of control. Helpless, out of control, that area there. So if you can be with yourself and know that, oh, wow, I'm going through so many changes. This is not a good trajectory that I'm on here. And still emotionally and maybe even physically hang on to yourself, right? Hold yourself. See if your own hands on your body feel acceptable. Can you open to that sensation? Or what sensation? Maybe your nerves have changed enough so that what used to feel really good, this used to feel really good, and now it's like, oh no, please don't do that. It feels prickly and horrible and fiery. No. But a softer, quieter touch actually might feel good. Something else might feel good. A different body part, your head, it might feel calming and wonderful. So if you can stay open to your entire body and not just the things that used to feel good, and different kinds of touch, change it up. It might be like, oh, firm is better now. I'm thinking about my feet. I like having my feet held, but oh my God, don't tickle me. Jesus, no. But a firm hold might be better, or a really soft touch might be much better. And maybe no touch for now, but not give up.
You said something that was really interesting to me just then. I think I heard you right when you said, maybe you can evaluate what feels good to you when you touch yourself, and that may inform you of what feels good. Maybe that would be useful for someone else to touch you in that same way.
Yes.
And that's really interesting to me because I was thinking about the way animals can be useful in this way. I think animals have this really interesting thing that they do. Dogs, I'm thinking of in particular, and cats do this too, where they come up to you and they sort of lean into you. And that always feels really good to me. And I don't know if that would feel good to everybody, but maybe that's a way you could even cue yourself too, is find another way to experience touch that's not from a person. That maybe it's rubbing your back against the corner of the door or something like that. It just occurs to me that it's not only the way I touch myself; it could be the way I'm touched in other ways physically that could inform me of these sorts of things.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. The reason that I say hold on to yourself, that because you got to hang on to you all your life, but also, touch can be so loaded. It can be so, like when something has changed, you could feel like a failure because you don't like the touch that your partner likes to give to you anymore. I might feel like a bad person because my body's changing so quickly. So many people take it as a personal failing when their physicality changes, when their body changes. And, without getting too much into the psychology of it, that can be a bummer. But if you think about, but I still like the cat on my lap. I still like to pet the dog. You still like touch. You still like that sensation. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you like a snake instead. But, which is a very different thing. So see if there are other things in your world that can still be pleasurable and fun about touch. And then it might give you more access to what's happening inside you and also to your body.
So can we go, or can I ask you to go? Because I don't have an answer to this. The question that was asked in the chat, what if your partner doesn't want to touch or be intimate anymore? I think it's such a hard and important question. Can you do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, therapy is a really good thing. And I'm not being blithe about that, but I think therapy is a really good thing. And sometimes what has happened is someone has changed so much so that they either are defensive and they do not want their partner to be close to them because it reminds them of what they've lost, or their partner has changed enough so that there's nothing there, there's no there, right? The intimacy that was between them, this can happen in any relationship, has disintegrated and they don't feel well matched anymore. So I would suggest that you talk with a professional who's really good at sussing these things out to see if, oh, okay, this is a big blip here. Or, you might be at the end of your relationship. And so now what do we do?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
one of the
everybody
things
take a breath.
yeah, well, that seems like a very important moment that can happen. I think it's worth sitting there for a second. And I think that's a really hard moment for people with Parkinson's and their care partners. I mean, there's already so much loss, and then you think, well, if a relationship that was so important to me can end, that's another hard thing to manage. So thanks for acknowledging that that's a part of this.
Well, and so I'm aware that all relationships have an arc. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And sometimes a crisis can draw out the relationship. Like you can't leave now. Look what's happened to me. How am I supposed to take care of myself? But if the relationship is ended and you're still in it, that's a very uncomfortable place to be. So evaluate. Now what do we do? Is it better for me to be my own person and try to figure this out on my own? That sounds awful. Is it better to stay in here knowing you don't like this anymore?
Or perhaps there's another way that the relationship can evolve that is very different than what it once looked like, and maybe that's another option to talk about. But that may be another instance where you might want to talk to somebody that can help you think through those big changes that might come to a relationship, because they can be really hard too.
Yeah, and that's actually one of my specializations is alternative relationship structures. So there's a lot of different ways that people live together, and even though your relationship might look different than it did in the beginning, it doesn't mean it has to end, because you don't want physical touch, you don't want romance, you don't want sex with each other. You may still have a very functional companionate relationship and figure out ways to have your needs met in different areas. That's possible.
What do people do if there's a difference in intimacy expectations and desires, and how do you navigate that without putting pressure on each other?
That is actually the number one reason that anyone would seek help from a sex therapist is different desire. So know that that is not weird. And of course, that changes over time. Each one of us changes constantly. And so very often that, like, couples go through this, like, we feel better met, we feel not so great, we don't like each other, we love each other again, we're like, I'm fed up with you, like all these things around sex and connection. My first command is don't do anything you don't want to do. There's wants, what I want from you. There's my needs, whatever our baseline touch needs are. And then there's our tolerance, right? And that's the buffer that we have where someone can say, hey, I could really use a kiss right now. And you go, I don't really want to kiss you, but you know what? I'm in a good mood. It's okay. I think I can do that. Okay, I'll give you a kiss. So the problem with that is not that particular thing, but the problem with being in a relationship where your sex drive has diminished and your partner's has not, and you feel like it's your job as a partner to have some kind of experience because they want it and they may feel like they really need this. But if you're using your body and you don't want to, actually hurting yourself, please don't do that.
How do you do that? How do I follow that command?
It's a good command and it's a good question. So I'm thinking about the other question that you sent me just before we started. What is it like to go through perimenopause and menopause? that really impacts a lot of people's interest in sex. Their bodies are changing really dramatically. If you're doing Parkinson's and menopause at the same time, oh my goodness, bless. It's rough. So once again, don't do anything you don't want to do. If your body is hurting, don't make it do something it doesn't want to do. If your mind is hurting, if your heart is hurting, you just don't put yourself in a position, I keep saying don't, where you feel like you're letting someone else use your body. Unless that's fun for you. But, we're talking about the not fun. Please don't do that. So sex is not, you don't find sex anywhere on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you never had sex again in your life, you wouldn't die. You might be grouchy for a while, but you would not die if that's something that you're still interested in. So need is a really, that's a thing. We confuse our sexual needs with our sexual wants often. And I tell this over and over to couples where one person feels like they're a piece of meat and the other person is not satisfied with what's happening, that other things are happening in the relationship too. And they're being worked out or acted out in the sexual thing that's happening between them. And so hold on to yourself. If you feel like your partner's not available for you, you want something from them and they're not giving it to you. Once again, talk to a professional.
And so I just want to draw attention to one nuance here. And then I want to go to a thing I think we haven't said anything about yet that I think is really, really important, which is the impulse control issues. But I just want to draw attention to the fact that I think what you've been saying almost this whole conversation could apply equally to either the care partner in a partnership or the person with Parkinson's, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But in some instances, there's a very complicated circumstance with regard to impulse control issues that relate to Parkinson's. So that is that's a difficulty. And I wonder if you can talk about that. How do you navigate that? And well, first of all, can you describe what an impulse control disorder looks like? And then also maybe talk about how they can be navigated if someone in a partnership with involving Parkinson's is experiencing that.
Yeah. So sometimes this happens when someone with Parkinson's is using a dopamine agonist, where their interest in risky behavior or sexual behavior or gambling suddenly increases. So they're not doing things the way they have been doing their lives. That they start the medication and suddenly they're thinking a lot about these things. They find themselves taking chances, being way more interested in sex. And even if they don't know it, I bet their partner notices. And so go back to your doctor and say, I think this is happening to me, and check the medication and see if they can do that. Because it can be really destructive to be in a relationship with someone who suddenly has what seems like an out of control sex drive, especially when everything else is changing too. That can feel like really out of hand, or you can get in a lot of trouble with gambling, doing risky stuff, driving in crazy ways. So if that feels like you, or if that feels like your partner, definitely contact your care team and say something is happening here. So I want to make a distinction between that and someone continuing to have what seems like their typical interest in physical touch and sex, and their partner is not interested anymore. So that's different. That is not impulse control behavior. That's the mismatch might get bigger as Parkinson's advances, or as menopause shows up, or as the indignities of aging happen. But that's not dysfunctional. That's typical, and we can talk about ways to modify people's behavior, what they do together, and then also what they do by themselves, so that everyone can feel more content in their own bodies.
I want to go a little bit more intensely on this question if I can, because I think this can be overtly dangerous, right? And impulse control disorder can be overtly dangerous to one or both partners.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I want to just draw attention to that and say, if you're feeling like if you're in danger, every time I'm going to say this, I'm going to ask this. If somebody's feeling like they're in danger, are there resources they can access? Do you have any thoughts about this? Or how can you
Oh
deal with this
gosh,
if there's a problem that's developing in an acute way?
that's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer that one. I would definitely go to the care team ASAP and see if you can not do the thing that you impulsively have decided is going to be a good idea. You know, don't. I mean, it's one thing to say that. It's like I hear Nancy Reagan in my head saying, "Just say no." So maybe not so helpful, but get help right away. And if you notice your partner doing things that seem like, wow, I'm really worried about you, then contact your care team. Tell your partner, I think something's happening with you. We got to get a grip.
So one other element to this, I think, and I realize I asked you a very difficult question that was totally off script here. So thanks for playing, going for it. But the other thing to think here is that we mentioned dopamine agonists, and one ought not simply just stop a dopamine agonist medication. So if you're experiencing a problem with this, one solution you should probably not go to right away without care team advice is stopping that medication if you think if it may be involved, because that can be very dangerous.
Yeah, correct. Talk to your care team. Like, pick up the phone now. At least leave a message and get some help with either switching a medication or tapering or whatever through your doctors.
So before we jump to another part of this conversation where I want to talk a little bit about caregiver and care partner sort of experiences and the effect of strain, I just want to jump back to a question that came in the chat from Greg, who wrote about RBD and sleeping in a king size bed, and there's a giant pillow between them because RBD you can sort of flail or sometimes there's danger in that way to a bed partner, just from somebody acting out their dreams.
Yeah.
So that can be a really I can say that we have that experience actually not because of I have Parkinson's. My partner actually moves a lot in her sleep. It's not she doesn't have RBD, but we actually sleep pretty far apart because of that, and it has affected our relationship, and even without RBD being involved. So, what do you do to navigate that issue if you want to remain connected physically and intimately connected? How can you navigate this problem where you have to sleep too?
In separate beds. Yeah. I mean, for your own safety, you might need to sleep in separate beds. And, I'm working with someone who has a hospital bed next to a regular bed so that they have a lot more space. But not everyone can do that. And you might need to sleep separately. So your best friend will be scheduling time to be spent in intimate connection, which means planning for cuddling, making cuddle dates. It means planning intimate time. Maybe you cuddle together before you go to sleep at night. If you want to have a sexual experience, talk about it ahead of time. You might have to plan anyway to figure out like what's the best time of day so that your meds aren't interfering and possibly are helping. What's the best time of day so you're not exhausted and you've had food and you've used the bathroom and you can do all these things. So this takes grown-up planning. And you can still have an intimate connection with someone, even if you're not sleeping in the same room, if you can plan it. So look at your schedule, figure out like how many times a week can we cuddle on the couch? How many times a week can we take half an hour before we fall asleep at night to just get a spoon in bed with each other before somebody has to put the CPAP machine on and, lie their head, elevate, all the things, right? So that you still have that closeness, that you don't feel like I'm not connected with my partner anymore. It's dangerous to sleep next to them.
That can feel so discouraging.
Yeah.
And so I say that from my own experience and also from talking with people.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing that I also hear is, and that I've experienced, is that it may feel bad at first, but it does seem like a lot of people start to get in, it becomes a pattern in your life. It's just the same as what time you eat dinner. It's like, now this is what we do. And if you can stick with it long enough, you can get over that sort of discouraging element. At least I think we have a little bit.
Yeah. And, I'm sorry, I'm having allergies today. I have to clear my throat. In the last 2 years, I've been reading articles about sleep divorce. And that's where people who don't have Parkinson's decide that, for the sake of better sleep, they're going to sleep in separate rooms so that they'll actually really get good sleep. If someone snores, if someone thrashes, if animals are on the bed, if little kids are coming in the room, that can be really disruptive. And so a lot of people have been saying, well, you could sleep in your own room. That would be good for your sleep. So, look at it in a bigger picture and see, this goes back to the thing about identity. If I identify as a person in relationship who sleeps with their partner, and I'm no longer able to do that, I then become, am I like the loser because I have to sleep separately because my sleep stuff is too disruptive? Or am I the scorned person because my partner's sleep is too disruptive? Right? See if you can let your identification around that relax. You're still partnered. You still have someone who wants to snuggle with you and cuddle and be with you, but you can't sleep in the same room.
It just occurred to me that one thing that I've never actually explored, but it makes sense to me that this would be a reasonable thing to do. Well, you're not trying to sleep in the morning, right? You're waking up, but you might actually want to have a cozy, cuddly morning. And that'd be even if you sleep in a different room, doesn't mean you have to wake up in a different room. Oh, you have to wake up initially.
You wake up and you go and you climb back in bed. Yeah. You get your morning snuggle in. Yes.
So let's jump to the care partner experience and fatigue, burnout, the sort of strain that care partners have because of Parkinson's. What impact do you see that having on relationships, and what do you see work for people to navigate that together when a care partner is really having that strain, that burnout experience? What do they do? How can that be navigated?
Boy, that's a real thing. Don't wait until you're burned out to get help. Don't wait until you can't do anything else to ask for someone else to step in for you. It's such a, to be able to take a break from caregiving is really important, even if it's for a couple hours. And maybe that's where your overnight rest is, to sleep in a separate room so that you're not continually disrupted. Okay, so it's the single best predictor of living a long and healthy life is to have a small circle of close friends. That's more important than whatever kind of relationship you have. That's more important than eating well, than getting exercise, is to have a small circle of close friends. Use that small circle of close friends as your support system to get you through your life.
So it's interesting to think about, because I think it's sometimes hard for people to maintain those relationships even because of Parkinson's. So it does. I'm thinking about everything we've said today. It seems like it's a constant, not constant. That's not fair. It sounds too heavy if you say constant, but there's like maintenance work you have to do for all these pieces of the puzzle to keep this going, and that can be so hard to accept, I think. But I think there's no way around it as far as I can tell. Does that sound right to you? Is it constant? What do you think about this? How does maintenance of these relationships fit into your life? Where do you put it?
I think that maybe constant. That does feel a little onerous, doesn't it? But cyclical.
Persistent maybe is better.
Persistent and cyclical. And the other thing is, look for ways that fill your cup, that help you fluff yourself back up, that feel really good, like a break from the doing of the things. Some people can look at touching their partner as another thing on my damn long list of stuff I got to do now. But if you can look at it more like, I get to touch my partner and they touch me, and that feels good to me. So to look for the joy that you can find in every day and every situation, right? And sometimes the stuff is just hard. Sometimes it's just hard. And so to give yourself a break as often as you can and ask for help from your care team, from your support systems, from your friends, from your family, from your next door neighbors, even in the little ways. I was picking up someone to give them a ride yesterday, and they got in the car and they gave me a gift card for a little soap store that's in my town. It's like, oh, because they were just thrilled that, that I helped them get around town to do these things. And I was like, oh, it felt so nice that they would think kindly of me like that and offer me a little present. So remember that that life is rough. Sometimes life is really hard, but it's also really beautiful. And there are lots of different ways that you can invite pleasure and joy and comfort into your life, even in all the hard things.
I probably don't touch my partner as much as she would like. And so I'm thinking, what do I get? I thought when you were speaking, I said, what do I get pleasure from? I got a new record yesterday and I put it on in the house. And it made me feel really good. And maybe the thing for me is when I do something for myself like that, maybe that's the time when I'm feeling good. I do something nice for her too. It's like that's the cue for me is when I do something good for me, do something good for her too, because then I feel better about that moment already because I did something that I want to do for myself.
Sure. Then
So I want to jump.
what else is the best way to feel better? Or if you don't feel good, the best thing you can do is do something nice for someone else. Isn't that funny?
So much of what we've talked about today has been about communication. Even the touch parts of this conversation have been about communication. That touch is in a way a sort of communication.
Absolutely.
And I think it's sort of good to be able to categorize it that way. It's helpful maybe, but it's also complicated because communication can be challenged because of Parkinson's. So I want to jump back to a question that was just asked, and I know we're getting close to time here, but I think if we can get this question, I think it'd be useful and maybe helpful. But it actually wasn't really a question; it was just a comment. Someone wrote in, "Morning activity was always preferred, but with Parkinson's, joint flexibility and mobility generally is not very present in the morning." So I think that's probably something that a care team, there may be medication help that could be had there. I think that's one of the reasons that Ambrosia is a useful medication for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. You got to get a prescription. There's complications with it, but it can be helpful. What else do you think? How can we overcome that limitation if the morning is a good time theoretically, but it's not actually a good time for connection physically?
Body's not responding well. There are all kinds of aids and supports that a person can find depending on what their body is willing to do and not do. You might find that morning is great for cuddle time, but it's hard for you to lie on your side because your neck gets weird or your shoulder gets weird or your leg cramps or whatever the things are. You can find supports to help you to get your neck at the right angle so you can lie in the bed like that, or a pillow between your knees, or whatever the things are that can support your physical body so that it doesn't require so much of you. You can still have touch and cuddling without being able to be gymnastic. If you want to touch each other's bodies and skin and you feel shaky or scratchy, then maybe use lotion or oil or something like that. That just, if you're feeling shaky, then that can help smooth contact between bodies. If you have some kind of nice lotion or something slippery to help so you don't stick and you don't feel as awkward. Did I answer that, Bo?
Well, I think it seems like you addressed it for me to some extent. I don't know if that's helpful to the person that I asked in the chat. So if you're the person who made that comment, please, if that wasn't sufficient, chime in. But one thing you drew to my mind in your answer, Dr. Rees, was not in the morning, but if I'm having trouble sleeping, we have a massage gun, one of those percussive massage guns. And something that really helps me if I'm tremory at night and I'm having trouble sleeping, that actually somehow distracts me from the tremor for a little bit. And if it's funny, I don't always ask because I get so frustrated. I get so down on myself when I can't sleep. But my partner started, I think probably because I'm annoying her by flipping around in the bed so often, she started to say, "Do you want me to massage gun you?" Because it's easier for her. She doesn't have to really work. So she doesn't have to fully wake up. She can just hold the thing over me, And it actually really, like the other day, I was not sleeping. It was up 2 a.m. and then she worked on me with that gun for maybe 5 minutes, I think. I don't even know how long it was because boom, I fell asleep and it was great.
Wow.
Now, that's not necessarily the intimate connection we want to have, but it might be helpful for the person who made this comment. If I don't know, I can't say I've never tried it that way, but I think it is maybe useful to think about other ways to incorporate sort of, I don't know, loosening up a little bit the sort of rigidity that might be experienced. It's temporary, of course, but it does help me anyway.
And there might be, there could be other things too. Some people like satin sheets because it's easier to slide across. They're not so sticky and you don't have to be so flexible or mobile to get yourself into position or to get back out of bed once you're in there, you feel trapped. To put webbing straps around the mattress or handles that you can use to haul yourself around on bed to get yourself in position and get back out of bed before you're all limber and ready to go.
Yeah, I actually use that for myself. Sometimes I'll like reach backwards towards a nightstand and I can like hold on to it and that can help me loosen up a little bit.
Yeah.
Just in terms of feeling, and that's not loosening up. I'm not like stretching it really. I'm just sort of getting in a different position so I don't feel as stuck.
Good. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just thinking of different tools that you can incorporate, and that's one thing I do also. So I think we had such an interesting and far-reaching conversation, and we're at the end of our time. But maybe we can just wrap up with one last question. And we talked about a lot of different challenges today, and also different adaptations. And I wonder if you can just give us a summary here. What does, from your experience working with people with Parkinson's for quite a while, and what does a healthy, fulfilling, intimate relationship tend to look like for people living with Parkinson's? Is that fair? Can you do that? Is that an answerable question?
Yes. I guess the main thing that I would say is don't give up on yourself. That it is possible to maintain a romantic and physical and sexual life with Parkinson's. It is possible. It takes flexibility. I mean, physical flexibility, of course, but it also takes emotional flexibility, mental flexibility. It takes letting your identity rise above whatever stuff is happening to you in the moment, because there's going to be more stuff, and realizing that it is worth it for you as a person, as a human being with a heart and a body and soul, to have this connection. And let's find out how great this can be. There's going to be terrible things always, but there's also available to you pleasure and comfort and joy and connection.
Well, Dr. Rees, I better not say anything else because I think it was a very, very, very excellent way to end this conversation. And I thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.